Before you buy a Dodge Charger, you need to understand something most people won't tell you. This is not just a car. It's a statement. And depending on how you use it, it can either be one of the most exciting cars you'll ever own, or one of the most expensive mistakes you'll make. Because the Charger lives in a very strange space, it looks like a performance monster. It sounds like a muscle car, but at the same time, it's a full-size sedan, 4 doors, real space, real practicality, and that combination is exactly what makes it so attractive and so misunderstood. To really understand the Charger, you have to go back to where it came from. The Dodge Charger name dates back to the late 1960s. It quickly became one of the most iconic American muscle cars ever built. Big V8 engines, aggressive styling, rear-wheel drive, pure performance attitude. And over time, that identity never really disappeared. Even when the Charger evolved into a modern sedan, it kept that muscle car DNA alive. And that's something very rare today. Now let's talk about what you actually get in a modern Charger. In the US market, especially in recent years, the Charger offers multiple engine options. Starting with a 3.6-liter V6 engine, it produces around 292 to 300 horsepower depending on the trim. That might not sound crazy, but for daily driving, it's actually more than enough. Then you step into the V8 territory, and this is where things get serious. The 5.7-liter Hemi V8 delivers around 370 horsepower, strong acceleration, deep, aggressive sound, and that classic muscle car feel. But then there's another level. The 6.4-liter Hemi V8, around 485 horsepower. This is where the Charger starts to feel genuinely fast. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 4.3 to 4.5 seconds. And then there's the extreme version. The Hellcat, supercharged V8, over 700 horsepower. This is not just fast. This is borderline insane for a 4-door sedan. 0 to 60 in around 3.6 seconds. And a top speed that pushes well beyond what most drivers will ever use. Now, here's the interesting part. Despite all this power, the Charger is still a big, heavy car. It's not a lightweight sports car. And you can feel that when driving. Acceleration is strong, especially in V8 models. But handling is more about stability than sharp cornering. This is a car built for straight-line power. Highway pulls. Rolling acceleration. Not tight corners or track precision. Now let's talk about fuel economy. Because this is one of the biggest trade-offs, the V6 models are reasonable. You're looking at around 19 to 30 miles per gallon depending on driving conditions. But once you move into V8 territory, things change quickly. The 5.7 Hemi averages around 16 to 25 mpg. The 6.4 drops even more. And the Hellcat? You're realistically looking at around 12 to 22 mpg, and that's if you drive it calmly, which most people don't, so fuel cost becomes a real factor. Now let's talk about the interior. This is where the Charger surprises a lot of people, because from the outside it looks like a pure performance machine. But inside it's actually very usable. Spacious seats, comfortable driving position, a large rear seat that can fit adults without a problem, and a trunk that's bigger than most people expect. This is a car you can actually live with. Now in newer models, especially from 2020 onward, you get modern technology. Large touchscreen infotainment system, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, navigation, premium sound systems, driver assistance features. It's not the most futuristic interior in the market, but it's solid, functional, and easy to use. Now let's talk about comfort. For a performance-oriented car, the Charger is surprisingly comfortable. The suspension is tuned more for daily driving than aggressive track use, which means it absorbs bumps reasonably well. Long drives are not a problem, and that's something that makes it stand out compared to smaller sports cars. Now here's where things start to get interesting, because the Charger is not just about specs. It's about image. This car has a presence. When you drive it, people notice. The aggressive front grille, the wide stance. The sound of the engine, especially in V8 versions, it feels powerful. It feels dominant. And for many buyers, that feeling is a big part of the appeal. Now let's talk about culture. Because the Charger is deeply connected to American car culture. It has appeared in movies, TV shows, most famously in the Fast and Furious franchise. That black Charger with massive power became iconic. And that image still influences buyers today. People don't just see a car. They see a symbol of power, rebellion, performance. But here's the reality. Owning a Charger is not the same as watching it in a movie. And that's where expectations can become a problem. Because while it looks like a performance beast, it also behaves like a big sedan. It's not as nimble as a sports car. It's not as efficient as a smaller vehicle. And it's not as cheap to maintain as people might expect. Now let's talk about reliability. Because this is something buyers need to understand clearly. The Charger is generally reliable, especially in V6 versions. The Pentastar V6 engine is known for being durable, but V8 models, especially high-performance ones, require more attention, more maintenance, more expensive parts. And if you push the car hard regularly, costs can increase. Now let's talk about price. In the United States, a new Charger typically starts around $35,000 for base models. Mid-range V8 versions can go into the $45,000 to $55,000 range. And high-performance models like the Hellcat can go well above $70,000. Used models vary widely. Older Chargers from around 2010 to 2015 can be found for under $20,000, which makes them very attractive for budget buyers. But again, lower price doesn't always mean lower cost of ownership, and that's something many people learn the hard way. Because buying the car is just the beginning, and the real cost comes after that. And this is exactly where most people start to see the real side of owning a Charger. Because beyond the purchase price, there are ongoing costs that can quickly add up. Let's start with maintenance. Basic maintenance like oil changes, brake pads, and tires are already more expensive than average sedans, especially if you choose a V8 model. Performance engines require higher quality oil. Brake systems are larger and wear faster. And tires, especially wider performance tires, don't last as long. Now, if you drive aggressively, those costs increase even more. It's not uncommon for owners of V8 Chargers to replace rear tires frequently, because of the power being sent to the rear wheels. Now let's talk about insurance. This is something many people underestimate. The Charger is classified as a performance vehicle, especially in V8 trims. That means higher insurance premiums. Younger drivers in particular may face very high monthly costs. And in some cases, insurance can be surprisingly expensive compared to other sedans. Now let's talk about repairs. The V6 models are generally more affordable to maintain. Parts are easier to find. Labor is more straightforward. But V8 engines, especially high-performance ones like the Scat Pack or Hellcat, can be expensive to repair. Supercharged engines in particular require specialized care. And when something goes wrong, it's not cheap. Now let's talk about common issues. While the Charger is generally reliable, there are a few things owners report over time. Electrical issues can appear in some models. Infotainment glitches. Sensor failures. Nothing catastrophic in most cases, but still something to consider. In older models, especially pre-2015, interior wear can be noticeable. Materials may not hold up as well over time. And some owners report transmission hesitation in certain driving conditions. Now let's talk about driving experience in real life, because this is where expectations meet reality. Driving a Charger feels very different depending on the engine you choose. The V6 is smooth, comfortable, good for daily commuting. It doesn't feel slow, but it's not aggressive either. It's more about balance. Now, the V8 changes everything. The sound alone transforms the experience. You press the throttle and you feel that deep, aggressive rumble. Acceleration becomes addictive. Highway merging becomes effortless. But at the same time, the car still feels big. You notice the weight. You notice the size in tighter spaces. Parking can be more challenging compared to smaller cars. Now let's talk about practicality. This is one of the Charger's biggest advantages. Despite being a muscle car, it's still a sedan. You get 4 doors, a spacious rear seat, and a large trunk. That means you can use it for daily life, groceries, family trips, road trips. And that's something many sports cars simply can't offer. Now let's talk about long-term ownership. Because this is where the Charger becomes a very specific kind of car. If you maintain it properly, it can last a long time, especially the V6 models. But high-performance versions require discipline. regular maintenance, careful driving habits, and a budget prepared for unexpected costs. Now let's talk about older Chargers. Models from around 2010 to 2014 are often very affordable. They still offer that muscle car look. And in V8 versions, they still deliver strong performance. But they lack modern technology, older infotainment systems, less advanced safety features, and interior quality that feels dated compared to newer models. Now models from 2015 onward improved significantly. Better interior design, updated technology, more refined driving experience, and overall better build quality. So if budget allows, many buyers prefer 2015 plus models. Now let's talk about customization and tuning, because this is another big part of Charger culture. Many owners modify their cars, exhaust systems, cold air intakes, performance tunes, wheels and suspension upgrades. Especially with V8 engines, there's a lot of potential for customization, and this is something enthusiasts love. But again, modifications can increase costs, and sometimes affect reliability if not done properly. Now let's talk about one important factor: attention. This is not a subtle car. People notice it, especially louder V8 models. That can be a positive for some. But for others, it can be a downside. More attention from law enforcement, more attention in public spaces, and sometimes higher risk of theft, especially for high-performance trims. Now let's talk about daily usability. In normal driving conditions, the Charger is actually easy to live with. Smooth ride, good visibility, comfortable seating, modern tech and newer models, but fuel economy and size are always factors. City driving can feel less efficient, and tight parking areas can be challenging. Now let's talk about weather conditions. Most Chargers are rear-wheel drive, which means in snow or heavy rain, traction can be limited, unless equipped with all-wheel drive in certain V6 versions. So for colder states, this is something to consider seriously. Now here's the key point. The Dodge Charger is not a perfect car. It has trade-offs: fuel consumption, maintenance costs, size, handling limitations. But it also offers something very few cars do: a combination of power, presence, and practicality. And for many people, that combination is exactly what they're looking for. And this is where everything comes together. Because at this point, the Dodge Charger stops being just a car and starts becoming a decision about lifestyle. Not everyone buys a Charger for the same reason. Some people want performance, others want presence, and some just want something different from the typical sedan. Now, if we look at the Charger from a purely logical perspective, it has clear strengths and weaknesses. It offers strong engine options, especially in V8 trims. It has one of the most aggressive designs in its category. It delivers a driving experience that feels powerful and engaging. And at the same time, it gives you real practicality. 4 doors, usable rear seats, a large trunk, but logic is only part of the story. Because cars like the Charger are also emotional purchases. You don't just drive it, you feel it. The sound of the engine, the way it accelerates, the way people look at it. And that emotional factor is something you can't measure on a spec sheet. Now let's talk about the real cost of ownership. Not just in money, but in expectations. Fuel will cost more, especially if you choose a V8. Maintenance will be higher than average. Insurance can be expensive depending on your profile. And if you go for high-performance versions, those costs increase even more. So this is not a car for someone trying to save money. It's not designed to be the most efficient option. And it's definitely not the cheapest car to own long-term. But that doesn't mean it's a bad decision. It just means you need to understand what you're getting into. Now let's talk about who this car actually makes sense for. If you're someone who wants a balance between performance and practicality, the Charger is one of the few cars that delivers that. If you want something that stands out on the road, this car does that effortlessly. If you enjoy driving, especially in a straight line, with strong acceleration and powerful sound, the V8 versions will not disappoint. If you need space for family or daily use but still want a car with personality, this is one of the best options available. Now, on the other hand, if your priority is fuel efficiency, this is not the right car. If you want a small, easy-to-park vehicle, this is not the best choice. If you prefer precise handling and lightweight driving feel, there are better options out there. And if your budget is tight, especially for long-term ownership, this car can become a burden. Now let's talk about different types of buyers. For a young driver who wants style and presence, the V6 Charger can be a good entry point. Lower cost, more manageable fuel consumption. Still looks aggressive. For someone who wants performance but still needs daily usability, the 5.7 Hemi V8 is probably the best balance. Strong power without going into extreme territory. For enthusiasts who want maximum performance and don't mind higher costs, the Scat Pack or Hellcat models deliver an experience that very few sedans can match. And for someone looking at used models, older Chargers can offer great value. But only if you're prepared for potential maintenance and wear over time. Now, here's something important. The Charger is one of the last true muscle sedans still available. And with the industry moving toward electric vehicles, this kind of car is becoming rare. That alone gives it a certain value. Not just financially, but emotionally. It represents the end of an era. Big engines, loud exhausts, raw driving experience, and that's something many people don't want to lose. Now let's bring everything to a final conclusion. Is the Dodge Charger worth it? Yes, but not for everyone. It's worth it for the person who understands exactly what this car is. Someone who accepts the fuel cost. Someone who is prepared for maintenance. Someone who values power, presence, and character more than efficiency. For that person, the Charger is not just a good choice, it's a perfect match. Because few cars deliver this combination of muscle, practicality, and identity. But if you're expecting a cheap, economical, low-maintenance car, this is not it. And that's where many people make mistakes. They fall in love with the look, with the sound, with the image, but they don't think about the long-term reality. And that's exactly why understanding the real cost of owning a Charger matters. Because when you go in with the right expectations, this car can be one of the most enjoyable vehicles you'll ever own. And when you don't, it can quickly become something you regret, so the decision is simple. If you want something practical, efficient, and low cost, look elsewhere. But if you want something that feels alive every time you press the gas pedal, then the Dodge Charger might be exactly what you're looking for.